In a galaxy where interspecies marriage was considered biological impossibility, Dr. Sarah Chun thought she had married Kethra for love alone. After all, what could a 5'2" human geneticist and a 7-foot draconic warrior possibly create together? But when Kethra stumbled into their laboratory one morning, scales shimmering with an otherworldly glow, clutching her abdomen with talons that could rend steel, and whispered those impossible words, "I'm carrying your eggs, somehow," Sarah realized that human determination had once again defied the fundamental laws of nature itself. What happened next would shake the foundations of 3 galactic empires, challenge every xenobiologist in known space, and prove that when humans set their hearts on something, even the impossible act of creating life with an alien species, the universe itself bends to accommodate their stubborn refusal to accept limitations. This is the story of how love, human ingenuity, and one very confused dragon changed the fate of the galaxy forever. Dr. Sarah Chun had always been told that humans were unremarkable. Average height, average lifespan, average intelligence by galactic standards. The Galactic Council classified them as a developing species with limited biological compatibility with other races. Sarah had spent the better part of her career proving them wrong, one genetic breakthrough at a time. Her laboratory on Research Station Kepler 442b hummed with the quiet efficiency of cutting-edge xenobiology equipment. Banks of quantum computers analyzed alien DNA sequences, while bioscanners mapped the genetic structures of hundreds of species. Sarah had made it her life's work to understand how different alien races could coexist, interbreed, and evolve together. Most scientists called it a fool's errand. Sarah called it Tuesday. The morning everything changed started like any other. Sarah was hunched over her primary workstation, analyzing tissue samples from a crystalline healer when the lab door burst open. Kethra stumbled in, her massive draconic frame filling the doorway. At 7 feet tall, with obsidian black scales that shifted to deep purple in the light, Kethra was an imposing figure even on her best days. Today, however, she looked distinctly unwell. "Sarah," Kethra's voice rumbled with the harmonics that made Sarah's heart skip every time she heard it. "Something is wrong with me." Sarah immediately abandoned her work and rushed to her wife's side. They had been married for 3 years now, a union that had raised eyebrows across multiple star systems. Draconians were known for their warrior culture, their rigid honor codes, and their complete biological incompatibility with most other species. Humans were known for being stubborn, adaptive, and utterly refusing to accept that something was impossible. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" Sarah's hands moved over Kethra's scaled arms, checking for injuries. The Draconian military had a tendency to throw their soldiers into dangerous situations with little regard for personal safety. Kethra's golden eyes met Sarah's brown ones, confusion and something that might have been fear flickering in their depths. "I went to the medical bay for my routine physical. The scanner detected something impossible." "Impossible how?" Sarah guided Kethra to the medical examination chair she kept in the lab for her research subjects. The chair groaned under the Draconian's weight, but held firm. Kethra's talons clicked nervously against the chair's armrests. Dr. Vexai ran the scan 3 times. He insisted there must be a malfunction. She paused, her internal flame flickering slightly behind her eyes. "Sarah," the scanner detected developing embryos. Sarah felt the world tilt sideways. "Embryos? But that's not possible. Draconian reproduction doesn't work that way. You're not even in breeding season, and besides, you'd need a male Draconian too." She stopped mid-sentence as the implications hit her. "The embryos are not fully Draconian," Kethra continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dr. Vexai showed me the genetic markers. They're hybrid, Draconian and human." Sarah stared at her wife in stunned silence. The scientific part of her mind was already racing, cataloging the impossibilities. Draconians reproduced through a complex process involving energy exchange and crystal matrix egg formation. Humans reproduced through biological conception and live birth. The 2 processes were as incompatible as matter and antimatter. "Show me," Sarah said, her voice taking on the clinical tone she used when confronting impossible data. Kethra pulled out a datapad containing the scan results. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she reviewed the information. The scans showed clear evidence of developing embryos within specialized chambers that had somehow formed in Kethra's lower abdomen. The genetic signatures were unmistakably hybrid, showing both human and draconian markers and patterns that should have been biologically impossible. How many? Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. 7, Kethra replied. Dr. Vexhai said they appear to be developing in individual biochambers that my body somehow created. He has never seen anything like it in any medical literature. Sarah's scientific mind kicked into overdrive. She began connecting her various scanning devices to Kethra, running her own analysis of the impossible situation. The results confirmed what she feared and hoped in equal measure. The embryos were real, they were developing, and they were genetically stable despite combining two completely incompatible biological systems. This shouldn't be possible, Sarah muttered as she reviewed the data streams. Draconian genetic material is crystal-based, structured around silicon matrices. Human genetics are carbon-based, DNA double helix structures. The two systems can't merge without causing cellular collapse. Yet here we are, Kethra said with a mixture of wonder and concern. Sarah, how did this happen? We have been intimate, yes, but our physiologies are completely different. There should be no way for conception to occur between us. Sarah paused her analysis and looked up at her wife. Kethra's expression was a complex mix of emotions that Sarah had learned to read over their years together. Fear of the unknown, wonder at the impossible, and underlying it all, a deep concern for what this meant for their future. I don't know, Sarah admitted, but I'm going to find out. She activated her primary research array and began running comprehensive biological scans of both herself and Kethra. The quantum computers hummed to life, processing terabytes of genetic data at incredible speeds. What they revealed sent chills down Sarah's spine. Kethra, look at this. Sarah pulled up a holographic display showing both of their genetic structures. Over the past 3 years, both of our biologies have been gradually changing. Your silicon crystal matrices show carbon integration points that weren't there when we first met. My DNA shows silicon bonding sites that are completely unknown in human biology. Kethra leaned forward to study the display. Are you saying we have been adapting to each other? More than that, Sarah's excitement was building as the pieces fell into place. Our bodies have been slowly creating biological compatibility where none existed before. Look at these protein sequences. They're completely new, hybrid structures that serve as translation points between our different biological systems. The implications were staggering. Sarah pulled up historical data from their medical records over the past 3 years. The changes had been subtle, gradual enough that routine medical scans had classified them as normal variation. But when viewed together, they told an incredible story of biological adaptation and evolution occurring in real time. This is unprecedented, Sarah breathed. Our bodies have been conducting biological engineering at a cellular level, creating new structures and processes to bridge the gap between our species. The embryos aren't just hybrids. They're proof of an entirely new form of reproduction that our bodies invented together. Kethra's scales shimmered with nervous energy. What does this mean for the children? Will they survive? Will they be healthy? Sarah ran additional scans, focusing on the developing embryos. What she saw filled her with both scientific awe and parental concern. The embryos were developing along entirely new biological pathways, combining the best aspects of both human and draconian physiology while avoiding the incompatibilities that should have made their existence impossible. They're beautiful, Sarah whispered as she studied the detailed scans. Each embryo is developing unique characteristics. Some show more human traits, others more draconian, but all of them are stable and healthy. How long until they develop fully? Kethra asked. Sarah performed rapid calculations based on the developmental data. Based on these growth rates and the unique hybrid physiology, I estimate approximately 6 months. But, Kethra, we need to be prepared. These children will be the first of their kind. We don't know what capabilities they might have, what needs they might require, or how the galaxy will react to their existence. The weight of that statement settled over both of them. The Galactic Council had strict protocols regarding new species and hybrid offspring. The Terran Federation would want to study the children extensively. The Draconian Empire would likely view them as either an abomination or a miraculous evolution of their race. We need to document everything, Sarah said, her scientific instincts taking over. Every stage of development, every biological change, every adaptation. This isn't just about our family anymore. This could change how we understand life itself. Kethera placed a massive, gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. Whatever comes, we face it together. These children are ours, and we will protect them. Sarah nodded, feeling the familiar surge of determination that had driven her throughout her career. Humans were often dismissed as unremarkable, but they had one trait that consistently surprised other species. When faced with the impossible, they simply refused to accept it. The first thing we need to do is establish a secure research environment, Sarah said, already planning their next steps. We can't let word of this reach the wrong people before we understand what we're dealing with. I'll modify the lab security protocols and begin comprehensive monitoring of the developmental process. What about Dr. Vexhai? He knows about the embryos. Sarah considered this. Dr. Vexhai was a crystalline physician with impeccable ethics, but he was also required to report unusual medical phenomena to the Galactic Health Council. I'll speak with him. Vexhai has always been supportive of interspecies cooperation. If I explain the potential implications and the need for careful study, he might agree to maintain confidentiality until we have more data. Kethera's expression grew thoughtful. There is something else we must consider. If our bodies can adapt to create compatibility, if we can produce hybrid offspring, what does this mean for other interspecies relationships? Are we unique? Or could this happen with other couples who share deep emotional bonds? It was a profound question that sent Sarah's mind racing through possibilities. If biological adaptation could occur through prolonged intimate contact and emotional bonding, it could revolutionize understanding of reproduction, evolution, and species interaction across the galaxy. We'll need to research that too, Sarah said. But carefully, if word gets out prematurely, it could cause panic or lead to exploitation of interspecies couples. She began outlining a research plan that would allow them to study their unique situation while maintaining the secrecy necessary to protect their growing family. The next few months would be crucial, not just for the development of their children, but for what their existence might mean for the future of galactic civilization. As Sarah worked, she couldn't help but marvel at the situation they found themselves in. Once again, human stubbornness had achieved the impossible. They had refused to accept that love had boundaries, that biology was fixed, or that different species couldn't build a life together. Now, they were about to prove that life itself was far more adaptable and creative than anyone had imagined. The embryos were growing, their children were coming, and Sarah Chan was determined to ensure they entered a galaxy ready to accept the miraculous possibilities of what two beings could create when they refused to let anything stand in the way of their love. Dr. Vexhai's crystalline features shimmered with concern as he reviewed Sarah's data in the secured meeting room. His translucent blue skin reflected the holographic displays showing the developing hybrid embryos, creating an ethereal light show across the walls. As a crystalline physician, Vexhai had seen many unusual medical phenomena, but nothing had prepared him for this. Dr. Chun, what you're showing me challenges everything we understand about biological compatibility, Vexhai said, his harmonic voice creating subtle musical tones. These developmental patterns are unlike anything in galactic medical databases. Sarah had spent 3 sleepless days preparing her presentation for Vexhai. She needed his cooperation, his expertise, and, most importantly, his silence. The data was overwhelming in its implications, but she had organized it into a clear narrative that told the story of unprecedented biological adaptation. That's exactly why we need your help, Sarah replied. These embryos represent a breakthrough that could revolutionize our understanding of life itself. But if this information reaches the wrong parties before we fully understand what we're dealing with, it could be catastrophic. Vexhai's crystalline fingers traced patterns in the air as he processed the information. Crystalline thought processes were notoriously thorough, which made them excellent physicians, but sometimes frustratingly slow decision-makers. The genetic integration patterns you've shown me are remarkable, Vexhai said after a long pause. The way human and draconian biological systems have merged and created entirely new reproductive pathways. It suggests that life is far more adaptable than our current scientific models predict. Which is why we need time to study this properly, Sarah emphasized. If the Galactic Health Council learns about hybrid embryos before we understand the process, they'll likely order immediate medical intervention. They could harm or destroy something unprecedented. Kethera spoke for the first time since entering the room. Dr. Vexhai, you have been treating interspecies couples for decades. You understand the prejudices we face, the assumptions made about our relationships. These children deserve a chance to develop safely. Vexhai's expression grew thoughtful. As one of the few physicians willing to provide medical care to interspecies couples, he had indeed witnessed the discrimination and skepticism that such relationships faced. Most medical professionals considered interspecies romance to be nothing more than exotic curiosity with no lasting biological significance. I will maintain confidentiality, Vexhai decided, but only under certain conditions. I must be involved in monitoring the developmental process. These embryos are medically unique, and their health must be our primary concern. Additionally, we must establish protocols for emergency situations. If the mother or children face medical crisis, all considerations of secrecy become secondary to preserving life. Sarah felt a surge of relief. Agreed. Your expertise will be invaluable. But there's something else we need to discuss. She activated a new set of holographic displays, these ones showing communication intercepts and data mining reports that she had been running covertly through her research systems. I've been monitoring galactic communication networks for any mention of unusual hybrid phenomena or biological anomalies. What I found is disturbing. The displays showed a complex web of communications between various galactic organizations, all centered around reports of unusual biological adaptations in interspecies couples. Sarah had traced dozens of cases across multiple star systems, all involving couples who had been together for extended periods and were beginning to show signs of biological compatibility. This isn't isolated to us, Sarah continued. There are at least 37 documented cases of interspecies couples showing signs of biological adaptation. Most are subtle, changes in hormone production, cellular structure modifications, immune system adjustments. But in every case, the adaptations are moving toward compatibility. Vexhai leaned forward, his crystalline form catching and refracting the holographic light. Are you suggesting this is a widespread phenomenon? More than that, Sarah said grimly. I'm suggesting it's being suppressed. She brought up a new set of data showing medical reports that had been classified, research funding that had been mysteriously cut, and scientists who had been reassigned away from interspecies biology projects. Every time a researcher gets close to documenting this adaptive process, their work is shut down or redirected. Medical reports showing successful interspecies biological integration are classified or disappear entirely. The Galactic Science Council has been systematically suppressing evidence of biological adaptation between species. Kethera's scales darken with anger. Why would they do such a thing? This knowledge could help millions of interspecies couples. Sarah had been asking herself the same question for days. The answer she had reached was troubling. Control, she said simply. The current galactic power structure is based on species separation. Each major civilization maintains its political and economic power through species loyalty and cultural distinctiveness. If interspecies couples can create viable offspring, if biological adaptation can bridge the gaps between civilizations, it threatens the foundation of how galactic society is organized. She pulled up political and economic analyses that painted a stark picture. The Terran Federation, the Draconian Empire, the Crystalline Collective, and other major powers all maintain their influence through species-based alliances and trade relationships. Successful interspecies reproduction could lead to new hybrid populations that didn't fit neatly into existing political categories. Hybrid children would belong to multiple civilizations simultaneously, Sarah explained. They could hold citizenship rights in multiple star systems, access resources, and technologies that are currently restricted by species-based treaties. A generation of hybrid children could fundamentally alter the balance of galactic power. Vexhai's crystalline form resonated with a low, concerned harmonic. And you believe powerful interests are working to prevent this? I believe powerful interests have been preventing this for decades, Sarah replied. The suppression of research, the classification of medical data, the social stigma attached to interspecies relationships, it's all part of maintaining the status quo. Kethra stood and began pacing, her massive frame moving with predatory grace despite her condition. What does this mean for our children? If there are forces working against hybrid offspring, they will target our family. Sarah had been developing plans for exactly this scenario. We need allies, people in positions of influence who understand the implications and support the rights of hybrid children to exist and thrive. She activated another display showing a network of potential allies across the galaxy. Scientists, politicians, military officers, and business leaders who had expressed support for interspecies cooperation or who had personal stakes in seeing such relationships succeed. Dr. Elena Vasquez at the Terran Xenobiology Institute has been fighting for expanded interspecies research funding for years. General Crothmore of the Draconian Fleet has a daughter married to a crystalline engineer. Ambassador Zephi of the Galactic Trade Council has consistently voted for policies supporting interspecies commerce and cultural exchange. Building a support network will take time, Vexhai observed. Time during which your wife's condition will become increasingly difficult to conceal. Sarah nodded grimly, which is why we need to accelerate our research. We need to understand the biological processes involved well enough to predict and guide the development safely. We need to document everything so thoroughly that even if we're discovered, the scientific evidence will be undeniable. Over the following weeks, Sarah, Kethra, and Dr. Vexhai established a covert research operation that would have made intelligence agencies proud. Sarah's laboratory was equipped with the most advanced xenobiology equipment in the sector, allowing for detailed monitoring of the embryonic development. Vexhai provided medical expertise and access to classified medical databases that revealed other suppressed cases of interspecies adaptation. Kethra, despite her condition, used her military contacts to gather intelligence on potential threats to their family. What they discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. The biological adaptation process was not random, but followed predictable patterns based on the emotional and physical intimacy between couples. The deeper the bond, the more extensive the adaptation. In some cases, couples had developed not just reproductive compatibility, but enhanced abilities that drew from both species' strengths. A human Etherian couple had developed shared telepathic abilities that surpassed either species' individual capabilities. A draconian crystalline pair had created offspring with both the physical resilience of dragons and the energy manipulation abilities of crystal-based life forms. Each successful hybrid represented a leap forward in biological evolution that occurred within a single generation. But they also discovered the extent of the conspiracy against such developments. The Galactic Genetics Council had been secretly sterilizing interspecies couples who showed signs of biological adaptation. Research facilities studying hybrid phenomena had suffered mysterious accidents that destroyed decades of work. Scientists who refused to abandon their research had found themselves transferred to remote posts or stripped of their funding and credentials. We're not just fighting for our family, Sarah realized during one late-night research session. We're fighting for the right of all life to evolve and adapt. The embryos continued developing, each scan revealing new wonders and challenges. Some showed predominantly human characteristics with enhanced physical capabilities derived from their draconian heritage. Others appeared more dragon-like, but with human-level cognitive flexibility and creativity. A few seemed to be developing entirely new biological systems that combined both lineages in unprecedented ways. They're going to be remarkable, Kethra said one evening as they reviewed the latest developmental scans. But they're also going to face challenges no children have ever faced before. Sarah squeezed her wife's taloned hand. Then, we'll prepare them for those challenges. We'll give them the knowledge, the allies, and the strength they need to succeed in a galaxy that might fear what they represent. As the embryos entered their second trimester of development, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She began secretly documenting their research and distributing copies to allies across the galaxy. If something happened to them, if their work was suppressed or destroyed, the truth would survive. We're not just creating children, she told Kethra as they watched the latest ultrasound showing 7 healthy, developing babies. We're creating the future, and no force in the galaxy is going to stop us from giving them the chance to live in a better universe than the one we found. The conspiracy against hybrid life was vast and well-funded, but it faced a fundamental problem. It was trying to suppress something that was essentially unstoppable. Love, adaptation, and the drive to create life were forces that had shaped the universe since its beginning. Human determination, combined with the strength and honor of the draconian spirit, would prove to be more than any conspiracy could contain. Sarah Chun had spent her career proving that humans were more remarkable than anyone gave them credit for. Now she was about to prove that love could literally reshape biology, that two beings from different worlds could create something unprecedented, and that the future belonged to those brave enough to embrace the impossible. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a routine inspection notice. Sarah stared at the official document on her workstation screen, her blood running cold as she read the bureaucratic language that barely concealed its true purpose. The Galactic Research Oversight Committee was scheduling an unannounced compliance review of her laboratory within the next 48 hours. Kethra, we have a problem, Sarah called out as her wife entered the lab carrying 2 cups of the exotic tea blend they had both grown fond of during their time on Kepler for 42b. Kethra's golden eyes immediately focused on the document displayed on Sarah's screen. Her military training kicked in as she analyzed the threat. This is not routine, she said grimly. Oversight inspections are typically scheduled months in advance. An unannounced review suggests they suspect something specific. Dr. Vexhai materialized in the lab's communication array, his crystalline form shimmering with concern. Dr. Chun, I've received similar notices. The medical bay is also being subjected to an immediate review. They're requesting all patient record from the past 6 months, with particular emphasis on interspecies medical consultations. Sarah felt the walls closing in around them. How do they know? We've been so careful. Information has a way of reaching interested parties, Vexhai replied. The question now is what we do about it. Kethra was already moving with military precision, checking the lab security systems and scanning for surveillance devices. We need to assume they know about the embryos. The inspection is just a pretext to gather evidence and take control of the situation. Sarah's mind raced through their options. The embryos were now in their 4th month of development, healthy and growing rapidly. Moving Kethra to another facility would be dangerous for both her and the babies, but staying put would expose them to whatever the Oversight Committee had planned. There's something else, Vexhai continued. I've been monitoring galactic communication networks, as you suggested. Several other research stations have been subjected to similar routine inspections in the past month. In every case, any research related to interspecies biology has been confiscated or destroyed. The pattern was clear and chilling. The conspiracy against hybrid development was moving from passive suppression to active elimination of evidence. Sarah realized they were facing a coordinated campaign to erase any trace of successful interspecies biological adaptation. We need to go underground, Sarah decided. Kethra, how long until your military contacts can arrange secure transport? 6 hours minimum, Kethra replied. But, Sarah, I'm not sure I can safely travel in my current condition. The biochambers supporting the embryos are delicate. Rapid acceleration or changes in artificial gravity could cause complications. Dr. Vexhai's form flickered with urgency. There may be another option. I have connections with the medical sanctuary movement. They operate hidden facilities dedicated to providing care for beings whose medical conditions are considered politically sensitive. Sarah had heard whispers of the medical sanctuary movement, but had never imagined she would need their services. The organization was rumored to help individuals whose medical needs conflicted with galactic political interests, operating in the gray areas between legitimate medicine and underground resistance. Can they handle a case this unique? Sarah asked. They specialize in the impossible, Vexhai assured her. Dr. Meridia Zinthara leads the movement. She's a former Galactic Health Council director who left after becoming disillusioned with the political influence on medical decisions. If anyone can provide secure care for hybrid development, it's her organization. Time was running short. Sarah began implementing emergency protocols she had hoped never to use. She encrypted and distributed copies of their research data to allies across the galaxy, ensuring that even if they were captured, the evidence of successful hybrid development would survive. She also began preparing portable versions of the monitoring equipment they would need to track the embryo's continued development. Kethra used her military training to plan their escape route. The research station had multiple transport bays, maintenance tunnels, and emergency evacuation systems. Getting off the station undetected would be challenging, but not impossible. "There's one more thing we need to consider," Kethra said as she reviewed the station schematics. "If they're willing to conduct unannounced inspections and confiscate research, they might also be willing to use force. We should prepare for the possibility that they want to capture us alive for study." The thought sent chills down Sarah's spine. The idea that her children might be viewed as experimental subjects rather than individuals with rights was horrifying. But it also strengthened her resolve to ensure their safety. Dr. Vexheim managed to contact Dr. Meridia Zinthara, and within 3 hours, they had arranged for a covert medical transport to extract them from the research station. The plan was risky, but straightforward. Sarah and Kethra would make their way to a maintenance bay where a medical shuttle disguised as a routine supply transport would collect them. As they prepared to leave, Sarah took one last look around the laboratory that had been their home for the past 3 years. The equipment hummed with quiet efficiency. The workstations displayed complex genetic analyses, and the walls were covered with images of their research breakthroughs. They were abandoning not just a workplace, but a dream of peaceful scientific discovery. "We'll be back," Kethra said, reading Sarah's expression. "When our children are safe, when the truth about hybrid development is known, we'll return to finish what we started here." The escape from the research station proved to be more complicated than anticipated. As they made their way through the maintenance tunnels, they discovered that the oversight committee had already arrived 12 hours ahead of schedule. Security teams were conducting floor-by-floor searches, using portable scanners to detect biological anomalies. "They're not just looking for research data," Kethra whispered as they paused at an intersection of maintenance corridors. "They're scanning for hybrid life signs. They know exactly what they're looking for." Sarah felt a surge of protective fury. These weren't bureaucrats conducting routine inspections. These were hunters pursuing her family with sophisticated equipment and military precision. The conspiracy against hybrid development had revealed its true nature. Using her knowledge of the station's systems and Kethra's military tactical skills, they managed to avoid the search teams and reach the designated maintenance bay. The medical shuttle was waiting, its external appearance perfectly matching the supply transports that regularly serviced the station. Dr. Meridia Zinthara herself was aboard the shuttle, a tall, elegant woman with the distinctive silver hair and purple eyes of the Etherian species. Her presence immediately filled Sarah with confidence. Etherians were known for their advanced medical knowledge and their philosophical commitment to preserving life. "Dr. Chun, Commander Kethra, welcome aboard," Dr. Zinthara said as they hurried into the shuttle. "I've heard remarkable things about your research. We're honored to assist in protecting your family." The shuttle departed the research station with textbook efficiency, its forged clearance codes and disguised energy signature allowing it to slip away undetected. As they entered hyperspace, Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. They had escaped, but she knew this was only the beginning of their challenges. "Where are we going?" Kethra asked as the shuttle's medical bay automatically began monitoring her condition. "Sanctuary 7, Dr. Zinthara replied. "It's a hidden medical facility in the neutral zone, built specifically to provide care for individuals whose medical needs are considered politically sensitive. You'll be safe there, and we have the equipment necessary to monitor and support your unique situation." During the journey to Sanctuary 7, Dr. Zinthara shared intelligence that painted a disturbing picture of the forces arrayed against them. The Galactic Genetics Council had established a secret division called the Biological Purity Initiative, dedicated to preventing what they termed uncontrolled evolutionary development. This division operated with significant resources and had the tacit support of major galactic powers. They view hybrid development as a threat to galactic stability, Dr. Zinthara explained. Their models predict that successful interspecies reproduction could lead to population mixing that would undermine traditional political and economic structures. They're willing to use any means necessary to prevent this outcome. Sarah found herself thinking about the broader implications of their situation. How many other families have they destroyed? How many potential hybrid children have been prevented from existing? More than we can count, Dr. Zintheros said sadly. But your case is different. The level of successful biological integration you've achieved, the number of healthy embryos, the documentation of the adaptive process, it's unprecedented. You represent proof that their suppression efforts have failed. That's why they're pursuing you with such intensity. Kethera's scales shimmered with determination. Then, we make sure that proof survives. Whatever it takes. Sanctuary 7 turned out to be a marvel of hidden engineering, a medical facility built into an asteroid that had been hollowed out and converted into a state-of-the-art hospital. The facility was staffed by medical professionals from dozens of species, all united by their commitment to providing care without regard to political considerations. Sarah was amazed by the level of sophistication and the resources available. The facility had equipment that surpassed anything she had seen at major university medical centers, all dedicated to cases that mainstream medicine wouldn't or couldn't handle. "We've prepared a specialized suite for your family," Dr. Zinthra said as she led them through the facility's corridors. "Dr. Vexhai transmitted your medical data, and we've configured our monitoring systems to track the embryonic development. You'll have everything you need to continue your research while ensuring the health of both mother and children." As they settled into their new temporary home, Sarah reflected on how much their lives had changed in just a few days. They had gone from respected researchers to fugitives, but they had also gained allies and access to resources they hadn't known existed. The medical sanctuary movement represented a network of individuals who refused to let politics override medical ethics. "The embryos are responding well to the transition," Kethra reported after their first full medical scan at Sanctuary 7. "All 7 are healthy and continuing their development normally." Dr. Zinthara reviewed the scan results with obvious fascination. "Remarkable. The biological integration is even more sophisticated than your initial report suggested. These children aren't just hybrids, they're evolutionary leaps forward." Sarah knew that their temporary safety at Sanctuary 7 was just that, temporary. The Biological Purity Initiative would continue hunting for them, and eventually they would be discovered. But they had bought time to prepare for the challenges ahead, and time to ensure that their children would be born into a network of support and protection. "We need to go public," Sarah decided as she watched the latest ultrasound showing her 7 children moving and growing. The conspiracy against hybrid development only works if it remains secret. Once the galaxy knows what's possible, once people see the beauty and potential of these children, the suppression efforts will become politically unsustainable. Kethera nodded in agreement. "But going public means exposing ourselves to direct attack. Once we reveal ourselves, there will be no more hiding. Then, we make sure we're ready for that fight," Sarah replied. "We gather our allies, we prepare our evidence, and we choose the time and place for revelation. Our children deserve to be born into a galaxy that celebrates their existence, not one that fears it." The hunt for their family would continue, but Sarah Chun was done running. It was time to take the fight to those who would deny her children the right to exist. The conspiracy against hybrid development was about to discover that it had chosen the wrong family to target. Humans might be considered unremarkable by galactic standards, but when their children were threatened, they became a force that could reshape the universe itself. The birth chamber at Sanctuary 7 had been transformed into something that was part medical facility, part broadcast studio. Dr. Meridia Zenthra and her team had spent weeks preparing for what they knew would be the most significant birth in galactic history. Sarah paced nervously as technicians made final adjustments to the recording equipment that would transmit the event live across the galaxy. "Are you certain about this timing?" Dr. Vexhai asked as he checked Kethera's vital signs. "Once we begin the broadcast, there will be no way to maintain anonymity. The Biological Purity Initiative will know exactly where you are." Kethera, reclining on a specialized birthing platform designed to accommodate her unique physiology, managed a fierce smile despite her obvious discomfort. "That's exactly the point. Let them come. Let the galaxy see what they've been trying to prevent." Sarah had spent the past month orchestrating what she privately called the revelation. Working with allies across the galaxy, they had prepared a coordinated release of information that would simultaneously broadcast the birth while distributing years of research data to every major news network, scientific institution, and government body in known space. The conspiracy against hybrid development would be exposed at the moment of its greatest failure. Transmission links are established, reported Dr. Zura Colvin, a Nebran communications specialist who had joined the medical sanctuary movement after her own hybrid research had been suppressed. We have confirmed connections to over 300 broadcast networks across 47 star systems. Conservative estimates suggest we'll reach an audience of 12 billion beings in the first hour alone. The number was staggering. Never before had a single event been broadcast to such a diverse galactic audience. Sarah felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. In a few hours, she would either spark a revolution in how the galaxy understood life and love, or she would expose her family to dangers she couldn't fully comprehend. "Sarah," Kethra called out, her voice strained but determined. "It's time." Dr. Zenthra and her medical team sprang into action with practiced efficiency. The birthing process for hybrid draconian human offspring was unlike anything in medical literature. The biochambers that had formed in Kethra's body over the past months were preparing to release their precious cargo, but the process required careful monitoring and support. Beginning live transmission in 30 seconds, Dr. Colvin announced, "Sarah, Kethra, the galaxy is about to witness something unprecedented." As the transmission began, Sarah stepped forward to address the audience she couldn't see, but knew was watching across countless worlds. "Citizens of the galaxy, my name is Dr. Sarah Chun. The woman beside me is my wife, Commander Kethra of the Draconian Fleet. Today, we're going to show you something that powerful interests have spent decades trying to hide. We're going to show you the birth of the future." The broadcast began with a rapid presentation of their research data, showing the biological adaptation process that had made hybrid reproduction possible. Sarah narrated the scientific discoveries while Kethra prepared for the birth, creating a narrative that was part documentary, part live medical procedure, and part declaration of revolution. For too long, the galaxy has been told that different species cannot truly unite, that love has biological limits, that the barriers between civilizations are permanent. Sarah continued as Dr. Zenthra began the delicate process of supporting the birth. "Today, we prove that life is more creative, more adaptable, and more wonderful than anyone dared imagine." The first biochamber began to open, releasing a flood of specialized fluid that had nourished the developing embryo for months. What emerged was a tiny being that combined the best characteristics of both parent species. The child had Kethra's golden eyes and elegant bone structure, but Sarah's smaller size and more delicate features. Tiny scales covered her arms and back, while human-like skin covered her torso and face. "Our first daughter," Kethra whispered, her voice filled with wonder as Dr. Zenthra placed the baby on her chest. "She's perfect." Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in stunned silence as the implications became clear. This wasn't a scientific curiosity or a medical anomaly. This was a healthy, beautiful child who represented the living proof that species barriers were artificial constructs. The second biochamber opened moments later, revealing a son who appeared more draconian in his basic structure, but possessed distinctly human facial features and expressions. The third child emerged with an almost perfect balance of both species' characteristics, while the fourth showed unique adaptations that belonged to neither parent species, but represented something entirely new. "Each child is unique," Sarah explained to the galactic audience as the medical team monitored all 7 births simultaneously. "They're not copies or variants of existing species. They're new forms of life that combine and transcend their genetic heritage." Dr. Vexhai provided medical commentary that helped the audience understand what they were witnessing. "The biological integration we're observing represents evolutionary advancement that typically requires millions of years, compressed into a single generation through the power of adaptive compatibility." By the time the 7th biochamber opened to reveal the last of their children, a daughter with iridescent scales that shifted color like living gemstones, The galactic communication networks were overloaded with response traffic. Government officials, scientists, military leaders, and ordinary citizens from hundreds of worlds were all trying to process what they had witnessed. The children are all healthy, Dr. Zinthara announced as she completed initial medical assessments. Heart rates are strong, neural activity is normal for hybrid physiology, and all biological systems are functioning perfectly. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she held her newborn son, a child who had been deemed impossible by galactic science just months earlier. Their names, she said, turning to address the broadcast audience. Our children will be known as the first 7. Arya, the bridge builder. Marcus, the strength bearer. Luna, the light bringer. Phoenix, the fire heart. Nova, the star touched. River, the life giver. And Sage, the wisdom keeper. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone watching. 7 children representing the 7 major galactic civilizations, each one proof that the boundaries between species could be transcended through love and determination. As the medical team completed post-birth procedures, reports began flooding in about reactions across the galaxy. The Terran Federation had called an emergency council session. The Draconian Empire was demanding explanations from their military command. The Crystalline Collective was analyzing the biological data with teams of their finest scientists. Every major government was struggling to respond to evidence that challenged fundamental assumptions about galactic society. We're receiving communication requests from 17 different government bodies, Dr. Colvin reported. Also, over 300 independent scientists are requesting access to our research data, and there appear to be demonstrations forming on dozens of worlds. Some of the demonstrations were supportive, with interspecies couples and advocates for galactic unity celebrating the birth of the first 7. Others were hostile, with species purists demanding government action against what they saw as an abomination. The galaxy was polarizing in real time around the existence of Sarah and Kethra's children. There's something else, Dr. Colvin continued, her expression growing concerned. We're detecting multiple ships approaching our position. Some appear to be medical vessels offering assistance, but others have military configurations. The moment Sarah had both hoped for and dreaded had arrived. The Biological Purity Initiative was making its move, but they were no longer operating in secret. Whatever they did now would be witnessed by billions of beings across the galaxy. Admiral Crothmore of the Draconian Fleet appeared on their communication system, his massive form filling the screen with barely contained fury. Commander Kethra, you will surrender yourself and the hybrid offspring for immediate medical evaluation. The Empire does not recognize these creatures as legitimate children of Draconian heritage. Before Kethra could respond, another transmission interrupted. General Elizabeth Sterling of the Terran Federation Space Command took over the communication link. Dr. Chun, the Federation demands immediate access to your research data and custody of the hybrid offspring for comprehensive study. These children represent a potential security threat to established galactic order. Sarah felt a surge of the stubborn determination that had driven her throughout her career. Admirals, generals, council members, and citizens of the galaxy, let me be clear about something. These children are not specimens to be studied, weapons to be controlled, or threats to be contained. They are our daughters and sons, and they have the same right to exist and thrive as any being in the galaxy. Dr. Zinthara stepped forward, her medical authority adding weight to Sarah's words. From a medical perspective, these children are healthy individuals with unique biological characteristics. Any attempt to treat them as experimental subjects would violate every standard of medical ethics recognized across galactic civilization. The standoff that followed was broadcast live to the galaxy, creating a moment of unprecedented tension. Military vessels from multiple civilizations were converging on Sanctuary 7, each with orders to secure the hybrid children. But they were doing so under the watchful eyes of 12 billion beings who had witnessed the birth and were now emotionally invested in the outcome. Dr. Chun came a new voice, this one belonging to Dr. Elena Vasquez of the Terran Xenobiology Institute. We're transmitting coordinates for a neutral facility under joint scientific oversight. The Galactic Science Council has agreed to emergency protocols that would allow your family to receive protection while comprehensive studies are conducted. Sarah recognized the offer for what it was, a compromise that would provide some safety for her children while still subjecting them to extensive examination. But after everything they had been through, after the conspiracy and suppression they had uncovered, she was unwilling to hand her children over to the same institutions that had tried to prevent their existence. "Thank you for the offer, Dr. Vasquez, but we decline. Our children will be raised as free individuals, not as subjects of scientific or political interest." The response from across the galaxy was immediate and dramatic. Offers of sanctuary poured in from dozens of independent worlds and organizations. The University of New Geneva offered to establish a special research chair that would allow Sarah to continue her work while maintaining her family's autonomy. The Independent Traders Guild offered to provide secure transport to any destination of their choosing. Most surprisingly, a coalition of interspecies couples from across the galaxy announced the formation of the Hybrid Rights Alliance, demanding legal protections for hybrid children and their families. As reports continued flooding in, it became clear that the birth of the first 7 had triggered exactly the social transformation that the Biological Purity Initiative had feared. Interspecies couples who had hidden their relationships were coming forward publicly. Scientists who had been suppressed were releasing their hidden research. The carefully maintained barriers between species were cracking under the pressure of demonstrated biological unity. "Sarah," Kethra said as she held 3 of their sleeping children, "look at what we've accomplished. Not just our family, but everything that's happening across the galaxy. We've given people hope." Sarah gazed at her children, each one unique and beautiful, each one proof that love could literally reshape biology. The battle for their rights was far from over, but the first victory was theirs. The galaxy now knew that hybrid life was not only possible, but magnificent. "The future belongs to them," Sarah said, watching little Phoenix's scales shimmer in the medical facility's lights while Nova's eyes tracked movement with distinctly human curiosity. "And we're going to make sure it's a future worthy of the miracle they represent." The first 7 had been born, and with them, a new era in galactic civilization had begun. The old barriers were falling, and no force in the universe could put them back together again. 5 years had passed since the birth that changed everything. Sarah stood at the observation deck of New Harmony Station, watching her children play in a zero-gravity recreational area designed specifically for beings with hybrid physiology. Aria soared through the air with natural grace, her small wings allowing her to navigate 3-dimensional space like a dancer. Marcus used his enhanced strength to help younger children reach play equipment, his gentle nature belying his impressive physical capabilities. The space station itself was a marvel of interspecies cooperation, built as a joint project between 7 different civilizations to serve as a research center and sanctuary for hybrid families. What had started as a desperate escape to Sanctuary 7 had evolved into a thriving community of beings who represented the future of galactic civilization. Dr. Chun, the delegation from the Galactic Unity Council has arrived, announced Dr. Zura Colvin, who had become the station's chief communications coordinator. "They're requesting an immediate meeting with you and Commander Kethra." Sarah smiled, remembering a time when official delegations had meant capture and suppression. Now, they typically meant requests for collaboration and consultation. The Galactic Unity Council was one of dozens of new organizations that had emerged in response to the hybrid revolution, dedicated to promoting cooperation between species and supporting the rights of hybrid children. "Tell them we'll meet in conference room 7 in 1 hour," Sarah replied. That will give Kethra time to finish her training session with the new security recruits. The past 5 years had transformed not just Sarah's family, but the entire structure of galactic society. The revelation of successful hybrid reproduction had triggered a cascade of social, political, and scientific changes that were still reverberating across hundreds of worlds. Within months of the first 7's birth, over 3,000 interspecies couples had come forward to share their own stories of biological adaptation. Hidden research emerged from laboratories across the galaxy, revealing decades of suppressed evidence about interspecies compatibility. The conspiracy of silence crumbled as scientists, medical professionals, and ordinary citizens demanded transparency about hybrid development. The Biological Purity Initiative had attempted to maintain control through increasingly desperate measures, including military action against hybrid families. But their efforts were undermined by the very public nature of their operations. When footage emerged of government agents attempting to forcibly separate hybrid children from their parents, public outrage reached levels that threatened the stability of major governments. The turning point had come during the Treaty of New Geneva, where representatives from all major galactic civilizations were forced to address the hybrid question under intense public scrutiny. Sarah and Kethra had testified before the Galactic Assembly, bringing their children as living proof that hybrid life was not only possible, but beneficial to galactic civilization. These children represent the best of all our species, Sarah had told the assembled delegates. Arya combines human creativity with draconian strength. Marcus shows draconian honor tempered by human compassion. Luna demonstrates that when species unite, the result isn't dilution, but enhancement. Our children aren't threats to galactic stability. They're the foundation of a stronger, more unified future. The treaty that emerged had established fundamental rights for hybrid individuals and their families, created legal frameworks for interspecies relationships, and mandated the sharing of previously classified research about biological compatibility. More importantly, it had officially recognized hybrid beings as full citizens of galactic civilization, entitled to all rights and protections afforded to any sentient being. But the changes went far beyond legal recognition. The emergence of hybrid populations had begun reshaping galactic culture, economics, and politics in fundamental ways. Hybrid children often displayed capabilities that exceeded those of either parent species, leading to breakthrough innovations in technology, art, and science. Diplomatic relationships between historically antagonistic species improved dramatically when they discovered they shared grandchildren. Sarah's own research had expanded far beyond her original focus on genetic compatibility. Working with the galaxy's finest xenobiologists, she had documented over 50 different successful hybrid combinations, each producing unique advantages and capabilities. Her work had earned her the Galactic Prize for Scientific Achievement, making her the first human to receive the honor. "Mom, look what I can do," called out Phoenix, Sarah's fourth child from the play area. The 5-year-old had discovered that her unique physiology allowed her to generate and control bioluminescent displays, creating patterns of light across her scales that could communicate complex emotions and ideas. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Sarah called back, never ceasing to be amazed by the capabilities her children displayed. Each of the first 7 had developed abilities that were unprecedented in galactic biology. Nova could perceive electromagnetic fields across a vast spectrum, making her an intuitive navigator and engineer. River showed empathic abilities that allowed her to sense and soothe emotional distress in others. Sage, despite being the youngest, demonstrated cognitive processing capabilities that astounded even crystalline scholars. Kethra joined Sarah at the observation deck, her military uniform now bearing the insignia of the Hybrid Protection Corps, an elite unit dedicated to safeguarding hybrid families across the galaxy. The past 5 years had seen isolated incidents of violence against hybrid children by extremist groups, leading to the formation of specialized protection services. "How was the training session?" Sarah asked, leaning against her wife's familiar strength. "Promising," Kethra replied. "We have recruits from 12 different species, all committed to protecting hybrid families. The Corps is becoming one of the most effective military units in the galaxy, primarily because our diversity of capabilities allows us to handle situations that would challenge any single species force." The Hybrid Protection Corps represented another unexpected development in the post-Revelation galaxy. Military forces discovered that mixed-species units often outperformed homogeneous forces, leading to experimental integration programs across multiple fleets. The old barriers between species were dissolving not through political mandate, but through demonstrated practical advantages. "What does the Galactic Unity Council want to discuss?" Kethra asked. "The Mars Colony Project," Sarah replied. "They want our children to be part of the first hybrid generation to establish a permanent settlement on a new world. It would be an incredible opportunity, but you're concerned about exposing them to additional risks," Kethra finished. I understand. They're still so young, and there are still those who see them as threats rather than children. The Mars Colony Project was one of the most ambitious undertakings in galactic history, a joint effort to establish the first truly integrated settlement where multiple species would live and work together as equals. The planners had specifically requested that hybrid families be part of the founding population, recognizing that hybrid children represented the best hope for natural integration between species. An hour later, Sarah and Kethra met with the delegation from the Galactic Unity Council in Conference Room 7. The group included representatives from major galactic civilizations, but also hybrid individuals who had risen to positions of leadership in their respective societies. Ambassador Elena Vasquez-Cole, herself a human Nebulan hybrid who had become the youngest person ever appointed to Galactic Diplomatic Service, led the presentation. Dr. Chun, Commander Kethra, we're here to offer your family an extraordinary opportunity to shape the future of galactic civilization. The presentation that followed detailed plans for a colony that would serve as a model for interspecies cooperation. Advanced medical facilities would support hybrid reproduction and child development. Educational systems would be designed specifically for multi-species learning environments. Economic structures would be based on cooperation rather than competition between species-based factions. Your children would be among the founding generation, Ambassador Vasquez-Cole explained. They would grow up in an environment where their hybrid nature is celebrated rather than merely tolerated. They would help establish a society where species barriers simply don't exist. Sarah found herself torn between excitement and caution. The opportunity was incredible, but her children had already faced more challenges and scrutiny than any children should. Did she have the right to subject them to the uncertainties of a colonial environment, even one designed to embrace their unique nature? What about security? Kethra asked, her military training focusing on practical concerns. The Biological Purity Initiative may be officially disbanded, but extremist groups still exist. A hybrid colony would be a high-profile target. We've planned for that, replied General Marcus Chinthor, a humanist guardian hybrid who commanded the colonial defense forces. The colony will be protected by the most advanced defensive systems in the galaxy, staffed by the Hybrid Protection Corps and allied forces from all major civilizations. More importantly, the colony will be established under the protection of the Galactic Unity Treaty, making any attack on it an act of war against the entire Galactic Alliance. The discussion continued for hours, covering everything from educational curricula to economic systems to cultural preservation. What struck Sarah most strongly was how the entire project was being designed around the assumption that hybrid children would be normal members of galactic society, not curiosities to be studied or protected. We need time to consider this, Sarah said finally, and we need to discuss it with our children. They're old enough to have opinions about their future, and their voices should be heard. That evening, Sarah and Kethra gathered their 7 children in the family quarters to discuss the colony proposal. At 5 years old, the children were remarkably articulate and thoughtful, a trait common among hybrid offspring who seem to develop cognitive abilities faster than typical for either parent species. Would there be other children like us? Asked Luna, her silvery hair shimmering as she considered the proposal. Yes, Sarah replied. The colony would have hundreds of hybrid children from dozens of different species combinations. You would be part of a community where being unique is normal. Phoenix's scales brightened with excitement. Could I use my light making to help build things? I want to make beautiful buildings that glow with stories. I think, Arya said carefully, that it sounds like a place where we could really help people. We could show the galaxy what's possible when everyone works together. Marcus nodded seriously. And if there are people who don't like hybrid children, we could protect them better if we're all together. River, always the empathic one, sensed her parents' concerns. Are you worried about us? We'll be okay. We're stronger together. Sage, the youngest but often the wisest, summed up the family consensus with typical directness. When do we leave? 3 months later, the Chun-Kethra family joined 47 other hybrid families aboard the colony ship New Horizon, bound for a world that would be renamed Unity after their arrival. The journey took 6 weeks, during which the children formed friendships that would last lifetimes and began planning the society they would help create. Sarah stood in the ship's observation deck as Unity grew larger in the viewport. The planet was beautiful, with vast continents and shining oceans that would provide everything needed to sustain a thriving civilization. But more than that, it represented something unprecedented in galactic history. A world where species barriers would never exist because the founding population had already transcended them. "No regrets?" Kethra asked, joining her at the viewport. "None," Sarah replied, watching their children play with friends who represented every possible combination of galactic species. "Look at them. They're not just our children anymore. They're the future." As New Horizon entered Unity's atmosphere and began its final approach to the landing site, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them here. It had started with a simple question about biological compatibility and had evolved into a complete transformation of galactic civilization. The old barriers were gone, replaced by a new understanding of what was possible when beings refused to accept limitations on love, cooperation, and life itself. The first 7 had become the first generation, and their children would be the second generation, and their children's children would inherit a galaxy where the idea of species barriers would be nothing more than a historical curiosity. Sarah Chun had set out to prove that humans were more remarkable than anyone gave them credit for. Instead, she had proved that all life was more remarkable, more adaptable, and more wonderful than anyone had dared imagine. As the ship touched down on Unity's surface, and the children pressed their faces to the viewports to see their new home, Sarah knew that this was not the end of their story, but the beginning of something far greater. The impossible had become inevitable, and the future belonged to those brave enough to embrace it. Humanity had always been told they were unremarkable. Instead, they had shown the galaxy how to transcend the remarkable and achieve the miraculous. And in doing so, they had given every being in the galaxy permission to do the same.